I'm here with Debo Harris. She is an experienced board director, professional property developer, fintech entrepreneur, and mentor. She's also an audit committee chair with a hospital, a university, and most recently the Children's Society, which is a national charity that fights child poverty and neglect and helps all children have a better chance in life. Debo is also the founder and regional leader for Lean In UK. Hi, Debo. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Corinne. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I know we are very close. We have been involved in Lean In together for years and have developed a good friendship where we can call each other at a moment's notice and just say, hey, I need to go over some things. And I just love that. I love that we have that connection, and you are empowering me, this woman, across the pond as well. So thanks so much for that.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure, actually, Corinne. And the time difference almost sometimes doesn't matter because we'll always phone each other. Technology is wonderful. That's why I'm so interested in how we can use it. So I always stay in contact. So even though I've visited the States and we see each other face to face at least annually,
yes,
having that. And I think the last time we spoke, I said to you that I just really enjoy the fact that I can pick up the phone and say, oh, let's just run this by Corinne, or you feel that you want to just call me and we can do that. So I'm more than excited by the opportunity to keep in contact with other regional leaders around the world.
Yes, and that is why I started this season, is because I wanted my audience and the Lean In organization and world and all the leaders across the globe to hear what we're doing. And so today I'm going to highlight you and what you do, and also what you're doing with Lean In the UK. So tell me what you do. What's your daytime job? What's your nighttime job? We all wear so many hats, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So in a nutshell, I have what you would call a portfolio career. So portfolio career I manage my own diary. That's the greatest thing about having a portfolio career. So because, as you heard, I do a range of things. The main things that I do, the things that put heat, light, dial tone, and a roof over my head, are my board roles and being a professional property developer. So I don't know if you know this, but I studied civil engineering. Here in London. I spent a fantastic year in industry in the United States, came back to London weather. So there was London fog, there was London rain, and I realized I just did not want to work outside in the cold. And then went into becoming a chartered accountant. I trained with Price Waterhouse and then went into the city. Because we're quite a close-knit family, when my sister had a child and my nephew had some development issues and had visual impairment, I found her struggling with some of the aspects of social services and national health. And as a family, I'm usually the person who's the problem solver. And I thought, I can solve the NHS. I can solve these problems. And I initially was attached to the NHS as a consultant, and then, so management consultant, not clinical consultant. And then I was challenged, honestly, for a dare, that I couldn't join the board of an organization. And I said, yes, I could. So that's my lesson number one, is always take the challenge, always work out of your comfort zone. So I joined my first board for a hospital. I think at that time it was a mental health hospital. But since that time, I've worked with mental health hospitals, specialist hospitals, the largest eye hospital in Europe, where I was the audit chair. And now I'm with an integrated hospital that does community work and hospital-based care. And all of those have been wildly outside of my comfort zone as someone who's worked in the city. But it's also given me an opportunity to share my skills, which are around finance, audit, governance, influencing, connecting people, and asking the double why question. because of the crisis in our family, and my lesson number 2 is never waste a crisis. It enabled me to be a lot more supportive to the family. So I moved away from my 70-hour-a-week venture capital job to initially working as a volunteer, then as a consultant, and then moving into board roles. So I joined boards very early.
Wow.
And have built up a portfolio of board roles around my skills and competencies. And I know this isn't a 10 top tips, but my lesson number 3 for that is find what you're good at, work in your passion, or find a niche where there are very few people, but there is a great need for people to understand that, become an expert in that, and you will never, ever be out of a job. And that's where I am. So my expertise has been in technology, cybersecurity, corporate governance, and I started in finance and I've moved into corporate governance. So my typical day, so for example, this week has been a typical sort of week for me. Monday I was at a conference, Tuesday I was presenting at a webinar, Wednesday I was at the Bank of England, Thursday I'll be at another seminar, Friday I'll be working with one of our circles in the west of London, central to west of London.
And so you're based in London, but you travel other places as well, right?
I do travel. My portfolio of roles are all based in the UK, but that doesn't mitigate travel. So a lot of the coaching that I do with my executive senior women's coaching, that's on top of the lean-in work, which is absolutely fabulous. But I often meet women who want more personalized, customized coaching. They're at a crossroads in their career. Many of them I'm thinking, oh, you just need help with that step up to your next board role.
Yes.
But actually what I find is that many of these women have a crisis of confidence. So I find it really, really helpful to have a personalized coaching program for them. And they're international. So a lot of my clients I'll travel to. I also have a lot of speaking engagements that are international. But yes, London is my home base.
Okay, I have to ask really quickly. This is a silly question, but being that we have been in San Francisco together, what's the difference between the San Francisco fog and the London fog? I mean, I know that the San Francisco fog kind of rolls in, but the London fog, what is that like?
So San Francisco fog, you can see it coming, it rolls in, and it's based on the geography. London fog tends to envelop you. Admittedly, we don't have as much as we used to, and that's because in London they've had a really big push on environmental issues. So there are no-go areas for high-polluting vehicles. We are really pushing on having a lot of electric vehicles, the public transport system. So a lot of the
Are electric.
We call them buses. Yes, they're electric or hybrid.
Gotcha.
But when the fog comes in, they used to call it the best fog was called a pea super, and that was
pea super.
PEA soup.
Yeah.
So pea super. So it would be just really thick, really thick. You couldn't see in front of.
Wow.
You couldn't see about 5 feet in front of yourself. We haven't had a pea super for a number of years, and it's great to have fog because the weather tends to be warmer than when it's crisp and chillingly cold or have a wind chill. So I've always preferred to have fog than a clear day with a biting wind.
Okay. I just had to ask because I was curious as to, where the fog comes from in San Francisco. I guess it's the same type, but it just different ways of how it settles and all that. So
yes, it's very well. We've got to get you over here to London.
Yes, I would love to. So tell me a little bit more about Lean In UK and how that came about. We all the leaders around the globe have their own sort of testimony and story as to how they started a Lean In group, and I'd love to hear yours.
My story, I think, is probably like a lot of the women and men who have become involved in Lean In. Read the book when it first came out. So this is a podcast, but for those who know me, they know I'm 5'5.5".
Gotta have
I will
that
not
half.
get used to my. I've got to have that half. So 5'5", spectacles, black. I'm not what you think about when you envisage a board director, or a woman in a senior position, or a woman who works in financial services in the square mile, which is the city of London, which is actually not square and it's not a mile and it's not just the city, but that's English for you. I think we invented the language, so I think we have license
Take liberties.
to take liberties with it. So I read the book, and a lot of it resonated with me. I didn't go to Harvard. I'm not from a middle class family at all, but a lot of the key things resonated with me as a woman of color, as a woman in a male dominated industry, as a woman who, one of my nicknames at work was Debo the Hated. I wore the badge with pride. I was the hated one because I was the person often asking the double why question. So you'd have a presentation. I'd say, oh, that's really interesting, but why is, and they'd answer that question. I'd say, okay, but if that's the case, then why is, so I found it easy to triangulate a lot of the presentations. And as you know, there are many people who make great strides in their career based on chutzpah and not content. And I found that I was often told not to be so aggressive, or I was the angry black woman, or I was the emotional person if you disagreed with, if you like, the popular voice around the table. But I was also on a lot of interview panels where we would get shortlists for people for quite significant jobs in the city or in public sector, wherever I was sitting as an independent panel member. And I'd look at the applications, and I'd look at the essential list, and if there were 10 essential criteria, most of the shortlists, it was typically mostly men, typically mostly white men, with an unbroken career of success in very established companies. So, 15, 20, 25 years, unbroken history, looking for a board seat. And they, whether it was executive or non-executive director, but they didn't meet all the criteria. And there'd be other women I would know, and I'd ask them, well, why hadn't you applied? And they said, oh, well, I didn't meet all the criteria. And after hearing that a range of times, I thought, well, Lean In isn't just for the young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed 20-year-old who's trying to get her first job or get onto an interesting project or work with his or her line manager. Lean In is just as valid for those women who are on the cusp of getting into the boardroom or on the cusp of getting in that's into the C-suite.
Yes.
But they were still second-guessing themselves. They were still counting themselves out of some really important roles where they could make a difference. They had the technical skills, they had the technical knowledge. And so I sat down with a couple of women in one of my organizations, and we started talking. And I would say I built my first circle without them knowing it was a Lean In circle. So that's one of the challenges that's the difference between us in the UK and you in America. Although we both speak the same language, we don't actually speak the same language. So it's usually, in America, you start a business, you fail, you can eat on the failure of your business for life. Everybody wants to invite you around, especially if you live in somewhere like Silicon Valley. They want to invite you to their home and, how did you do it? How did you do it? In the UK, if you start a business and fail, women grab their children and cross the street across the street. Oh, don't look at that nasty person. They failed in business. So it's a different thing for women to join publicly, be seen to be joining a network of support on accountability, especially if you're a senior woman, because if you were a senior woman and you had your stuff together, you didn't need that. And it was a vicious cycle of you need it, but if you join one, then you're not ready to be a senior person, because if you were senior, then you wouldn't need it. So you have women coming into Lean In. And my first Lean In circle wasn't a Lean In circle that you could find on the Lean In website, because it was very senior women at senior management level or just under C-suite, who were still struggling with a lot of the issues in Lean In. They weren't sitting at the table. They weren't raising their hand. They were, working twice as hard for half as much.
Right.
They weren't building their networks. So we sat down and we were very clear about what's the one thing you want to get within the next 9 months to a year. And some of them wanted to get a C-suite position. They wanted to move from deputy, whatever the C-suite role is, into a C-suite role, whether it was in their organisation or elsewhere. Others wanted to be paid market rate. Others wanted to really challenge the status quo on the work-life balance and ask their companies to step up and walk the talk. And we went through the program. There was lots of free information that was available from the Lean In resources. We brought in fantastic speakers. We helped these women to create their networks. We got some fantastic facilitators out of these women who were initially good friends.
Yeah.
And after 9 months to a year, we'd all achieved what we wanted. And my main thing was to see these women step up or step out or step into their new roles.
Yes.
And then they turned around and said, well, it was 5 women, so it's 6 of us in the first circle. And they all turned around and said, well, I've got a friend that would really love this. So some went off and set up their own circles. Others brought their friends and said, oh, Debo can help you. So we started another circle.
I love that.
And we literally just created facilitators. And now we have 3,000 women. So since 2014, we've got 3,000 women in 62 locations. Some of the circles were started with women who have been through our circles. Others were circles that asked to join the network. There are massive circles up and down the country. I think there's a Leeds, which is now setting up as its own separate network, has I think about 550 women in their circle. Manchester also has a few people. The south of England has some. We did originally work with circles that were on the piece of the world's land mass that is Northern Ireland and Ireland. But we now want to encourage people, if there's a network local to them, to work with that network. So we ask circles to join up with other people local to them. So that our Lean In story is changing all the time. So I know that 2020 is a large focus on girls. In the UK, the way we're looking at that is girls going into STEM, so science, technology, engineering, or maths-based careers.
Yes.
But we're also looking at an area that I have found from my own experience is very ignored, and that is our legacy ladies, and that's what we're calling them. For 2020, we have our legacy ladies, and those are women who are on the board, and we're asking them to either build their ladder, restart the elevator, or restart the escalator and send the lift back down. Because they're successful. If it's just a ladder that they used, then they need to repair the broken rung, which I think came out of the McKinsey report this year, and show other women the ladder. If they came up an escalator, then they need to restart it or speed it up. And if they were lucky enough to have an elevator, then they need to send the elevator back down to help more women, so work in volume, to help more women get to the levels that they are, and to do it as a conscious thing.
Yes.
Rather than, I'll just mentor one person, or I'll see a young person and tell them, look at where I am, you can do it too.
Yeah. How does that look? How does that look for them to restart the escalator, send it back down? What can you share a story or some type of example of how that looks for a woman, 2 women or a woman?
So I can share a personal story.
Okay.
So as I said, on boards, especially for the public sector, so government or government-related organisations. So in the NHS, I've been a non-executive director and an audit committee chair. So the audit committee, for those who don't know, is the most exciting board committee. Don't listen to what anyone tells you. The audit committee is the most exciting board committee because we look at the internal systems and controls of the whole organisation. And as someone who is naturally nosy and inquisitive, it's the perfect committee because we can ask questions, get reports, and get reviews done for anywhere in the organisation. And what I find is that we often take advice and get help from external suppliers, internal auditors or external auditors, because the audit committee also looks at the financial reports of the organisation every year. And in government contracts, what you tend to do is have a tendering process that can be quite extended, where they will pitch, they will send in their reports, they will then have an initial meeting face to face. They may have what you would call a beauty parade of them doing their presentation. So you may have 2 or 3 presentations. So I've spent a lot of time on the other side, so listening to the pitches. And I remember one particular very large professional service firm, and they brought their brightest and their best, as they said, because they really wanted to work with the organisation. And their brightest and their best honestly looked like a grandfather, a father, and a grandson. So it was 3 men, older, sort of mid-aged, and bright-eyed, bushy-eyed junior. All men, all dressed the same way. I think 2 of them even had the same tie. And my challenge was, where's the diversity in your organisation? And I got a wonderful comment back. And people think that because I'm born in a black skin or because I'm a woman, that I have expertise in diversity, equalities and inclusion. I know enough to be dangerous. What I know is the audit committee, but what I also understand is when you have a diversity of thought around the table or in the investigative team or the people doing the reviews, you can get a fantastically different view because people look at things from different perspectives. If everybody comes from Shropshire, or everybody lives from Winchester, and they all sent their children to the same school, and they all went to Christ Church or Jesus College, Oxford, and they're exactly the same, or they've been moulded to be exactly the same. It's so easy to fall into groupthink. So it was good. I felt that it was my responsibility to challenge the firms that were going to deliver services to an organisation that had a very diverse population, with very diverse social economic needs. Some people were in, government-sponsored housing, what you would call the projects almost, and other people lived in massive mansions, and 200 nationalities within the area that was served by the organisation. It was necessary to make sure that the people who were pitching for work could understand and work with the diversity of people that we had, both as our staff and as the people who used our services. So a legacy lady should ask, where's your diversity? So that's if you like, that's the first question. And I was then given a wonderful, really nice paragraph. It warmed, as we say in England, it warmed the cockles of my heart. And it was one of those statements that goes something like this. We insert the name of the company, are fully committed to equality, diversity and inclusion, and we do everything to ensure that people bring their best and most unique aspects of and it's really, really well thought out. But I said, that's wonderful, but I don't see it. So it may be your best statement, but I don't see it. Where's your diversity? Where are the women in your organisation? How many women do you have in senior management positions?
So asking,
how do you support women? So it's asking the questions from the position of authority that you have. I wasn't banging
To
on.
make them a bit accountable,
Yeah, well,
right? To say, where are
match
these
it.
people? Yeah.
Because you have to match. So issues around, for example, women's empowerment, or it's not my area, I think, to talk about the gender pay gap for a supplier, but it is my role to ask a supplier how they're addressing equality or the diversity of their workforce. How do they support young women who want to make a career in what is sometimes a really high pressure, high number of working hours? How does it fit with their business prospects? Because I know if we get great services to the organisation whose board I sit on, our performance will improve. So tying the questions to the bottom line, for some people, the bottom line is about the quality of the service they give. Others, it is around the pounds and pence, or the dollars and cents. If they're multinational, then the currency, the actual net bottom line. But asking the question as to how they embed these in their core values and how it enhances the quality of the business that they do. For some people, it may be around, being quite clear on how. So for some people, they may have the passion. Their passion may be on sustainability and using the Earth's resources wisely. Asking those questions as to how they embed that, because if people are doing things efficiently, if they're going paperless or paper light, if they're using more technology to have sort of voice over IP meetings rather than flying around the globe, if they're doing something to reduce their carbon footprint, and for some organisations in the UK, you pay a fee for your carbon footprint. So ideally, you want to get that amount of money that's going out as a cost every year down. So there is always a way to tie things around diversity or sustainability to the bottom line or the things that matter to an organisation.
That's good.
So for me, I asked that question, and I asked it, and the gentleman who was leading the tender process, we're very diverse. And I said, well, it doesn't look diverse to me. It looks like grandfather, father, and son.
Yes.
And
nepotism, a lot of nepotism.
Well, wait, no, it wasn't nepotism. They just looked.
They looked all the same. They all looked the same. Gotcha.
Yes, as I say, it looked like a family. Granddad, dad, and grandson had turned up to pitch. Now they weren't related, but what happened for the next round is the team that they fielded very different.
Oh, good. So
very different, led by a woman.
That's good.
Clear ethnic minorities as part of the team.
Yeah.
And then I asked my second question, which was, well, are they just bringing people so that they'll shut me up? Because there's also the issue of tokenism. If you're going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
You don't want to just be on there for
yes.
Appearances.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good.
But it's also, so they did happily get the contract, but being a legacy lady, it doesn't stop there. So I would say to their lead, who used to come to the audit committee meetings, I'd like to see some of your juniors. I'd like you to have some juniors work shadowing you. Now, in some organizations, they have reverse mentoring or they have mentoring programs. But if you are just about struggling to keep up with your new job, you're a graduate, and as far as your family is concerned, you may be the first one to go to university, or you may be the first woman who's getting to that sort of middle to senior management position. You may not be as adept as other people in building your network or getting that face time with some of the real heavy hitters in your organization. As a legacy lady, I asked the senior partners from the legal firms that we worked with the accountancy or professional service firms that we worked with. In fact, all of our suppliers, I said, my meetings are open for you to bring someone to work shadow you. And I'm keen for them, if it means that they add an additional day to the cost of what we're doing, but as a result, they're able to cover the time for that younger person or that young lady or that person of color to come and see them in action and then be able to have a conversation afterwards with their senior leader. Because I've understood that when people look up and they look across in their organization, oftentimes they want to see someone who looks like them. But oftentimes
people are more comfortable, but it needs to be diverse.
Yeah, and if the people who are in positions of authority do not look like you, you still have to find some common ground so that they can see you.
Yes.
Because you only work with people that you know, like, and trust. It's the same thing all over the place. So if you have an opportunity to spend some time with a leader, you see how they operate, you see how they work with a customer, in that case, my organizations, and then you can understand why your junior work is important. You also are able to build your network. And so I can ask organizations to be more sponsoring of junior members of staff, because the attrition of women at the time that they think, do I lean in with my job or do I sort of check out and focus elsewhere? If we're able to get more people who are unlike me as a woman or me as an ethnic minority to prop their door open and say, yeah, come with me, sit at the table, see what we do, then you then are able to say, if he can do it, I can do it too. Or if this person can do it, I can do it, because you're getting a greater understanding by being there in the room. Now, clearly what you do in the room is up to you.
Yes,
but
right. You've got to rise to rise to the job well.
A legacy person, a legacy lady, her role is to ask those questions. Her role is to challenge the leaders. Her role is to sit in the remuneration committee and ask for the spreadsheet that shows the C-suite pay and challenge the C-suite pay where one of them is wildly out of market rates because it's a woman.
Interesting. Yeah. That is great work. Great work that you're doing. And I'm glad that you shared that with us about how that looks. And you've given some great examples of how to restart that escalator, send it back, and to help more women. And so it's the asking questions, it's the awareness, it's the, repairing that broken rung, because a lot of times there isn't that rung for someone to grab hold of. And that was very well represented in the McKinsey report with Lean In, Women in the Workplace that we've been talking about here on the show, which is I'll put a link to that if people want to read that report.
And that's the 2019 report.
Yes. Yes. So now we're going to move on to something a little bit more fun and whimsical. I would love to hear what you are loving these days, as far as, are you reading something fabulous? Let me know a couple of books, and then what was the last thing, because you in the UK also have Amazon, and we are all obsessed. I was just talking to my book club last night, and we were all just talking about, even if the product is $5 less somewhere else, we will find it if we find it on Amazon, we will buy it on Amazon, which is what I do all the time. Sometimes I'll be in a store and I'll see something and I'll be like, I wonder if I can just get that on Amazon, and click on my phone, and it will be there at my house in 2 days. And of course, this is a sponsored ad because we are sponsored. This podcast is sponsored by Amazon, which I have to say because of legality purposes. So, but I would love to hear what you are reading these days and what you're loving.
Well, I have to say, first of all, that my family is absolutely obsessed
with Amazon.
And not in a good way. They're obsessed with Amazon. the number of times that I've come home and tripped over an Amazon
Packages.
Prime delivery, and it is Christmas every week. So Christmas is coming up. The end of the holiday seasons are coming up, and for us, it's just even more presents. But as the nights turn darker, a lot faster, and as the weather becomes less. See, I love the sun and I love the heat.
Me
and
too.
I love sort of humid heat. So the heat that you get from central heating doesn't do it for me. But what I do love, and what I've been absolutely obsessed with now, and this happened last year. So my mother, who is from Caribbean heritage, has always said nothing beats a good soup. And I used to poo-poo that. Oh, it's rubbish. I'm not having soup. But I used to think about very light broths. But my mother makes the sort of soup that is rich, hearty, filling. And this is the time. So right from September, October time, when squash and pumpkins and all of those things start coming into season, my mum used to make soup. And I learned last year how simple and a really great soup is, and I've been obsessed. So I bought and broke my first immersion blender last year, and then I bought another one. The immersion blender, so it's the handheld blender.
I love those. Yes.
So you can get some that have got some fantastic attachments. They've got whisks to them. You can do shakes. You can make soup. You can whisk cream. I mean, this is currently.
It's
can I
amazing.
say the brand name?
Yeah. Say the brand name.
So the brand name is Braun. So I have a Braun immersion blender. It's not the cheapest thing in the market, but if you're looking for, I think so. Hasn't sort of
I think
signed
mine
on.
is Braun as well. And you can make soups out of anything.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
the beauty of it.
So I have made a mushroom soup. In fact, what really started it was I was at a client lunch. So that's the other thing. As an audit committee chair, you're often invited to a client meeting, which is usually at lunchtime with the suppliers. And
you had a soup.
I had a soup and sat there almost in tears. It was so lovely. It was a vibrant green, and there was a vibrant green. The partner of the firm had a rich tan soup, and I couldn't help it. And I was like, oh, that's really good. And by this time, I've known him for a couple of years. I said, can I please taste your soup?
Yeah.
And I could not. They were amazing. And I said, I have to speak to the chef. And he said, oh, this isn't done. And I thought, well, what's the use of being a short, fat black woman if you can't do things differently? And I said, well, I'm sure I demand to speak to the chef. And he came out of the restaurant and I said, I need the recipe.
Yeah.
And he said, well, it all starts with the onions. And we had a fantastic lunch. I walked off with this man's recipe, which apparently came from his grandmother.
Oh my goodness.
And I made it, was obsessed, bought an immersion blender and have not looked back. And it's so quick. You can honestly make a great soup with just a few ingredients. And with the winter, you can make a lovely hearty soup. You can thicken them up with potatoes. If you're on a keto diet, you can thicken things up with almond or avocado. Listen, I am on a roll. I actually have my own bullet journal that has a collection of soups.
Oh.
Just my own collection of fantastic soups. I'm trying to do a few for the summer as well. So that's where I'm at.
I love that.
The soup queen.
I love that. I love my immersion blender as well, because you can make soups out of anything. So for time purposes, tell me 2 books that you're reading that are on your nightstand.
So I am currently reading a book called The Bullet Journal Method. So I have two books on my nightstand. I got into journaling in a big way, and you can find some fantastic YouTube videos on journaling. But Ryder Carroll, who originally wrote his first book about the bullet journal method, he then last year came out with a new book, which I'm only now getting round to. I have a big stack of books by my nightstand. So here's The Bullet Journal Method by Ryder Carroll. Track your past, order your present, and plan your future. It's just taking people back to the original concepts of bullet journaling, so transforming your life using the bullet journal method. So I have what you would call a Franken journal. So it's a bit like Frankenstein. So I do a bit of bullet journaling. I use a Leuchtturm bullet journal, but I also do things in a traveler's notebook. For those who understand, for those of your listeners who understand the power of journaling, and that's another thing that we can talk about
a whole nother, that's a whole nother show.
But having a Franken journal, which is just using the parts of journaling that works for you. And so the bullet journal method is really helpful to just reconnect me on that. And it seems like quite a few people. I'm also rereading Belonging by Michelle Obama. I sort of snorted
Becoming
by Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
And I literally snorted that when it first came out, and then went to see her when she came for the second time to London. It was what Michelle Obama would probably call a small fireside chat. There were sort of about 10,000 people in the O2, which is one of our larger events. But that is just a powerful story. Really well written, down to earth.
Yeah, and you and I are going to meet virtually and talk about it with some of our other Lean In folks, sisters across the globe.
Literally across the globe. I think
literally, yes.
I think we've got people in the Middle East, in India. I really don't know. We're going to have to pick a time that's going to be unfortunate for someone.
Yes.
But it will literally be a global conversation. I think there were ladies from New Zealand, Australia, on the main continent of Europe, the UK, India, I think Thailand. Yes, it's going to be fun.
I can't wait. Yes, it's going to be a good conversation. I may even do a little short podcast on my favorites about it, and maybe have everyone kind of share a tidbit of two about what they like about it. That would be a fun show. Well, Debo, thank you so much for coming on. We've run out of time. I can't believe it's already time's up, but we thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story with us, and more power to you. Keep empowering, keep being a legacy lady, and building those ladders.
It was a real pleasure to talk to you, Corinne. It feels as if we've sort of been sitting on the sofa, having a bit of a chat, as opposed to thousands of miles. So I really appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. I am a fanatical listener of your podcast, and they're just so down to earth, full of practical tips, hints. It's fantastic to finally get a chance to sit down with you and have a chat.
Thank you so much.